Hello and welcome to this first lesson in our new scheme of learning, which is all about the story of the Galapagos Islands. It is a fascinating set of lessons where we're going to understand the significance of the Galapagos Islands, how they were formed, and we're going to learn so much about our evolution from this tiny archipelago which is just off the coast of South America. Today, we're going to look at where the Galapagos are and start to think about why they are important. And by the end of this session, you should hopefully be able to describe the location of the Galapagos Islands, describe some of the physical and human characteristics of the Galapagos, explain some of the environmental threats facing the Galapagos, and explain some of the strategies being used to manage the Galapagos Islands. As important as the learning today, we're going to develop some skills used about taking better notes. So you're going to give you quite a lot of detailed information today and use these study skills to condense them into a more usable form. And it's a skill that you can take forward with you not only in geography, but many other subjects too. Your outstanding ATL is, whether you're at home or in the classroom, listen extremely well to our explanations and complete your work with enthusiasm. So, on your student sheet, or if you're using a piece of paper, your first task is to describe the location of the Galapagos Islands. This would be similar to the exam skills that we use usually. So, 3 marks. I'm going to ask you to pause the video and you can come back to it as soon as you've completed that task. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you'll have picked up all 3 marks. And how do we do that? Well, you should have hopefully used the names of continents. South America should be in your answer somewhere. You should have got the country Ecuador in, hopefully, as that's the closest country to the Galapagos. And hopefully you should have said that the Galapagos Islands are west of Ecuador or South America, because remember, when we're describing a location and using a map, we should always use compass directions. We can see the Galapagos is also in the Pacific Ocean. So hopefully we're using information that we can see to describe the location. These are very simple skills, but very effective at understanding the location of somewhere and how we do that. Now we've done that, I'm going to introduce you to a short video on the Galapagos. You don't need to make any notes. There's no task to follow this. This is just an introduction to these fascinating islands.
Of all the islands in the oceans of the world, one group, more than any other, has changed the way people look at the planet and the forces that shape it. The Galapagos Islands, the Enchanted Islands, the Islands of Fire, located in the Pacific Ocean, about 1,000 kilometers offshore from Ecuador. As a young man, Charles Darwin visited there in 1835 and was amazed by the creatures he saw. Giant tortoises, flightless cormorants, iguanas, all living side by side with fur seals and penguins right on the equator. It became his laboratory for the study of the origins of life. What Darwin did not see were the Galapagos Islands underwater. If you fly over them, you can see 19 big islands and dozens of rocky islets projecting above the water's surface. But if you could hitch a ride on a turtle or a whale, or could imagine draining away the surrounding Pacific Ocean, you would see the real Galapagos Islands, a chain of undersea mountains, a submerged archipelago that stretches for hundreds of miles and hosts a lively assemblage of underwater plants and animals, including many that live there and only there. Deep, cold ocean currents converge under the equatorial sun, a natural living laboratory on the land and in the surrounding sea. In 1977, northeast of the Galapagos Islands and about 2,000 meters down, scientists discovered hot water vents connected to the core of the Earth, a discovery that brought radical new insight into how the world is formed. Amazingly, the hydrothermal vents supported a food chain not dependent on the energy of the sun, but on chemical energy from the heart of the Earth, specifically hydrogen sulfide. Microbes gather near the vents on the seafloor and feed off the warm, mineral-rich water welling up from the Earth's mantle. The microbes thrive in the deep blackness of the sea, surrounded by creatures that in turn feed off them. Dozens of small, medium, and rather large creatures not previously known to exist. When Darwin arrived on the Galapagos, no people lived on the islands, but whalers and pirates had already depleted the tortoises, turtles, and many of the birds that had no fear of humans and could easily be picked up and eaten. By the 1960s, a few thousand people had settled there, and efforts were underway to protect the nature of the islands as something important not only to the people of Ecuador, but to the world. The land and surrounding ocean are now recognized as World Heritage Sites, and 97% of the land above the ocean surface is protected as a national park. In 1998, some of the surrounding sea was also designated as a marine reserve, but the pressures from the now 30,000 residents and more than 100,000 annual visitors and an international market for its marine wildlife are causing problems for all of the creatures on the islands, including its people. There is still a chance here to glimpse the past and to plan a future where people can find ways to take care of the natural world that takes care of us.
Okay, hopefully that video gives you a bit of an idea about what the Galapagos is like and some of the issues that we might be thinking about in the coming weeks. There's some links to our prior learning in there because we've looked at ecosystems before. We've looked at places of high biodiversity like the rainforest before, and that's similar to the Galapagos. We've looked at the threats that the rainforest might face. Equally, there's links to our work on tectonics, our plate boundaries, our volcanic activity. And we've looked at that previously before, so these ideas will come into this unit. Along with that, the video also talks about some of the threats that the Galapagos face. One of these places that's an unknown and was previously an uninhabited location now faces some threats, but equally some of the management strategies too. So let's take that a little bit further. Your task now is to read the information sheet that's been provided. There's quite a lot of information, I know. So what I'd like you to do is read it. If you want to highlight key points or annotate points that you think are important, feel free. At the minute, just think about that question. What are the Galapagos like and why are they important? And that's really what you should be thinking centrally as you read through this information. Once we've read it, I'm going to teach you how to not only understand the answers to our key objective, but equally how to get notes like this and put them into a more usable form. Pause the video here, and when you've finished reading the information, annotating it, and you've understood it, come back to me. And welcome back. Hopefully you've read the information and you can see there's some really interesting geography there. There's some information about the history of the Galapagos, the physical and human characteristics of the Galapagos, how it was formed. We can think about some of the threats, some of the species that live there, and some of the strategies that we might be thinking about in terms of how we manage the Galapagos. Equally, I'm sure you'll understand there's a lot of information there. So how do we condense that down? This is what we're going to do. Firstly, I'd like you to summarise what's the big picture. So, Thinking about that article you've just read, in no more than 100 words, summarise what it was about. What's the key ideas that run through it? What would you, if you had 100 words to explain to somebody that didn't read the article, what would you say? Once you've done that, I want you to then think about what are the 10 key points. So if you were to pick 10 key strands of information that runs through that article out, what would they be? I'll pause the video here and come back to it once you've done the big picture and the 10 key points. And welcome back. So hopefully now you've got the big picture. You've summarised what that information is about, the Galapagos, the Islands of Wonder. And you've now got your 10 points that you think are pretty important that summarise or help summarise that information. How we now make this even more useful is to develop this into a mind map. So using your 10 key points as the branches, what I'd like you to do is put those around the title, what the Galapagos like and why they're important. Once you've got your 10 key points round, you've got the startings of that mind map. And this is where you now can start to add extra bits of information. And this is a really useful thing to do at the start of any unit or big piece of work, because you can keep going back to this mind map and you can keep adding specific details as you go. Pause the video here and complete the mind map task. Come back to me as soon as you've finished that. Okay, welcome back. If you finished all that, well done. You've worked really hard, and that's not an easy skill. It's one that you can develop as you move forwards, and hopefully something that you can see how that could be used in different lessons. So to finish today, we were thinking about what were the Galapagos and why they're important, and I wanted you to be able to describe the location of the Galapagos. That's the easy work. But could you also tell me something now about the physical and human characteristics of the Galapagos? What's it like? What's the features of the Galapagos? Could you also tell me some of the environmental threats facing them and also explain how they could be managed? So just to finish today, thinking about that key objective, there's a small space on the sheet if you're using that, or if not, answer that key objective, no more than 3 sentences. Once you've done that, well done. And next time round, we'll look at how the Galapagos were formed and the processes involved in that happening.